The war on drugs is an abject failure because it is fundamentally a war on broken people. That's one of the main ideas discussed in Gabor Maté's In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. Let's see what it's all about. Okay, so Dr Gabor Maté is a trauma specialist and he runs an addiction clinic in Canada where he is trying to reduce the harm around drug addiction. Lots of his patients are heroin and cocaine users, and their lives are just not together in any way, shape or form, and he's doing his best to try and push them in the direction out of their addiction. But unfortunately, a lot of these people suffer from stuff like paranoid delusions and are just completely unable to really interact like everyday people do. Now, this is not generally their own fault. A lot of these people come from backgrounds of severe abuse, living on the street. A lot have severe underlying mental health issues that stem from an abusive childhood, and they were never able to fully integrate with society as a normal person would. Now, as you can imagine, he's seen a lot of terrible stuff. Many of his more long-term clients, or should I say patients, have hurt themselves, and a few of them have died from overdoses and things like that. I'm not going to detail all the gory and graphic stories that are found herein because, quite honestly, I don't think that it would be good for YouTube, but there is some really harrowing stuff in here, and yeah, it will be difficult for some people to read, but I think that this type of stuff is very important. Dr. Maté riffs a lot on how people have gotten to where they are when they find themselves in his clinic, and a lot of he details a lot of the reasons why people take drugs, and he goes on some very interesting there's some very interesting passages in here about why some people can take drugs and not become addicts themselves, and it has pretty much everything to do with trauma. And so some people use drugs, they're self-medicating. Most people, that's how they use them, and some people, they just use it as a social lubricant. And he's really, really interested in what actually is their underlying. So, like, in a way, the addiction comes before the drug, and he really explores that herein. So it's his belief that fundamentally addiction stems from extreme trauma, usually around parenting and early childhood. And yeah, there are a few, I can only describe them as absolutely disgusting stories of how children were treated in here. So there's a really good, another author that he quotes in here, Primo Levi, and he was a Jewish Auschwitz prison camp survivor. And he has said that anyone who has been tortured will remain tortured. And that pretty eloquently sums up how and why people keep going back to drugs, is that no matter what they do, the pain will always be there. And if you want to try and overcome addiction, you really need to find a way to, I don't like the phrase get over, because I don't think you ever can. Really hard wired pain, you can't, like, you've got to find a way to integrate that Otherwise, it will just eat you from the inside out, and you'll never actually truly be able to escape things like addiction. I know that when I was at my worst, I just wanted to numb myself. That's all I wanted, is just to get away from the constant pain. And it's a weird thing, because you kind of people torture themselves through ruminating about what happened to their lives and trying to think about it differently, when it's like, really, people just want out of the pain, and they just want that numbness. And I can see very easily, had I ever been exposed to intravenous drugs, I probably would have become an addict myself. I mean, I've experienced nowhere near as much trauma as what the people in this book detail. Like, this is some really, really harrowing stuff. But I mean, I lost my dad at 4 years old, and I never really had another positive male role model in my life. It's almost like it's like an inflection point where all it takes is the wrong button being pushed at the wrong time. And it's like the, what do they call it, the sliding doors moment, where your life could go in one direction and go down the other. And when my marriage nearly fell apart, that was the push that knocked me down, where all I wanted is to just numb myself. And I mean, I've been a pretty regular pot user since my teens. But yeah, that was the shove. That, like, I was exposed to a lot of drugs in the party scene through my early 20s and it took a long time to get myself clean from that. So yeah, I can completely understand how people, having gone through some of the stories that are in here, how they ended up where they are. It's something, like, everybody likes to tell themselves, like, I could never end up there, but that is just completely not true. I don't know where I heard it, but every human has inside us every other human, in a sense. Like, we've all got a Hitler and a John Lennon inside of us, and you can't escape that. Like, what's the saying there? But for the grace of God go I. It really resonated with me. The same parts that really resonated with me in Johann Hari's work, and that is when they start touching on what's referred to as the harm reduction treatment methods. Now, let's cut the shit out and just say, ultimately, the war on drugs has been a complete and abysmal failure. Drugs are still rife in our culture, and I don't think they're ever going away, because humans have taken drugs for at least 5,000 years. I think the earliest known recordings of people using pot and opium medicinally date back to China, about 3000 BC. So yeah, we've had drug culture for a very, very long time, so it's not going away. And I mean, there are socially acceptable drugs. Caffeine is a drug that it's essentially extremely low grade ice, or like it's. I mean, we've got lots and lots of socially acceptable drugs, and why some are acceptable, why others aren't, I can't really tell you. I mean, I guess a lot of it, and this is going to sound really, really weird, but it is actually the prohibition of drugs that causes pretty much all of the problems. I know Portugal transferred into a more harm reduction method and decriminalised all drugs, and they actually saw the worst of them, like ice and heroin use, went down. And America seems to have this, I'm not sure where it comes from, whether it's something to do with this weird kind of from the Christian right, where they somehow believe that prohibition and abstinence is actually going to work, which I find absolutely hilarious, because I mean, Texas just passed the anti-abortion bill, and the dirty secret that Texas doesn't want you to know is they have the highest rate of extramarital pregnancies and teenage pregnancies in all of the Western world. And I very highly suspect that is because of the prohibition and the push for abstinence. Right, because essentially you're creating the myth, like it's the forbidden fruit thing, where, you know, don't think of the pink elephant. Right? When you give something the forbidden fruit, and another thing, Portugal saw teenage use of marijuana lower as well, because it's got less of the forbidden fruit thing around it. But anyway, essentially, if you decriminalize all drugs, it gets rid of the black market around it. And if you get rid of the black market, you don't have people doing crime to get their fixes and things like that. And a lot of people find it much like if you're not chastising and ostracizing someone because of their use, it becomes a much easier way to get through to them and start lowering their usage to the point where they can actually get off of the stuff. And also it removes a lot of the risk. I mean, let's face it, street drugs can be pretty nasty. You don't know what's in them, and that presents a very large danger. Back in the party scene, there was always a lot of pills around, ecstasy, MDMA, but if you were smart about it, you'd be testing what's in them before you took them, because a lot of the people, you know, it's all run by the bikies, and ultimately to them it's a business selling all the dodgy shit. You don't know what it's cut with and things like that, and it's just, I mean, you might be buying flour, you might be buying rat sack for all you know, and that is extremely dangerous. And unfortunately you can't stop kids from experimenting, and therefore it becomes our responsibility to make these things as safe as we can humanly make them, because people are going to do them regardless of whether it's there's a prohibition against it or not. I mean, look at the alcohol prohibition in the 1920s. That shit didn't work, and it created a black market around it, and a lot of people died of shit like a lot of people were blind from methanol poisoning and things like that, because people will just make a product that's cheap as possible to get it out there because they know that they can make it. There is a really, really good video by a YouTube channel called Kurzgesagt, and it's about how the illegality of methamphetamine actually makes it stronger, because there's a lot of risk for the drug runners smuggling it around, so they increase its potency in order to be smuggling less physical volume, and therefore the drugs become much, much stronger. And ultimately, the harder you try to crack down, the higher the street price will go, the more incentive there is for people to do it, especially on the drug dealing side as well. And yeah, I don't know how to convince the people in power that that's the right way, that this is the right way forward. Harm reduction is the only way to solve this problem. But at the same time, there's a lot of money in the war on drugs, unfortunately. The government is essentially making as much money out of this as the drug dealers are, unfortunately, and it's a disgusting fact. And I kind of think that that's where they don't want to fix the problem, unfortunately. And I genuinely do not know how to move forward from this. So, do you have someone in your life with a drug problem? Might not be an illegal drug, it might be alcohol. Could be anything, really. That's one thing that I took away from this, is that people can get addicted to anything. There's a really good passage where Dr. Maté starts talking about the idea that people are primed for addiction because they actually have a brain deficiency where their brain doesn't process neurotransmitters as well as everybody else's, and because they have this deficiency, drugs generally, so like methamphetamine will flood your system with 1200% the amount of dopamine and won't let it be picked back into the neuroreceptors. And that's why people have this euphoric buzz from it. And then there's also the energy levels, which a lot of people, I mean, that was one of my main problems with it. And yeah, essentially once this pump is primed, you could almost become addicted to anything. So there's obviously sex addiction, internet addiction, TV addiction, profit addiction but yeah, essentially once this pump is primed, you can get addicted to anything because you will want to repeat behaviors that stimulate those parts of the brain that release dopamine and serotonin. The clinical definition of addiction is this: a chronic neurological disease characterized by behaviors such as impaired control of drug use, compulsive use, continued use despite harm, and constant craving of a substance or behavior. Now, addictions themselves are essentially a craving for an altered state of consciousness. And drugs just so happen to be the fastest route to that, unfortunately. And when you start putting it in that context, you can see how people get addicted. So to sum this all up, essentially, the addict is craving love. They've missed out on it as childhood. They've missed out on love and respect and nurturing as children. And unfortunately, the drugs have just become a poor substitute for that. And I think we're all a lot closer to these people than what we'd like to believe. Sorry, it's very bright out here at the moment. So this brings me to something I'd like to finish with here. It's a quote that I used in my mother's eulogy. There's a quote from the book Contact by Carl Sagan, and it goes something like, "Little creatures such as we are truly alone in the darkness, and the only way we can make that darkness bearable is with love." And I think that that's pretty much how we move forward to help these people. At the end of the day, they're kids scared in the dark with no one to help them. And that's just gone on for years. And ultimately, these people are just no different from me or you. They've just had a shitty life. And if we were to live their lives, we'd be in exactly the same situation as they are. So I think that ultimately, the only way forward from here is compassion. And unfortunately, a lot of people look down on the users. And that is actually the last thing. You're actually making the situation worse for a lot of these people, unfortunately. It's not about, they've got shitty self-control and things like that. It's a much deeper thing than that. And yeah, I mean, if you had had an abusive upbringing and you had access to anything that would take that pain away, I'm pretty certain that you'd be using that. So it's time to move forward with a bit more compassion and stop throwing people with a mental health condition in prison. Because essentially what you're doing is you're sending them to crime university there. I think it's pretty rare for a person to be able to come out of jail and get their shit back together. Alrighty guys, let's wrap this up. Have you read this one? if you have, I'd really like to talk to you about it in the comments below. Gabor Maté has quickly become one of my favourite authors. His head is in the right place and his heart as well. He seems to really want to help, and I think that it is only through compassion that we can move forward on this topic. If you haven't read this one, I very, very highly recommend it, especially for those that have someone in their lives that is struggling with addiction. I think that this will help you put it in context and be a lot less judgmental towards them. Just fair warning, if you are going to read it, there is a lot of harrowing material in it. There is some stories of child abuse and sexual abuse and that type of thing. So just be fair warned, it can get quite dark in bits. But again, I very, very highly recommend it. Again, yeah, if you have read it, let's chat about it in the comments. I would really like to see what people think about this stuff, because it is quite a contentious topic. But until next time, I'm Nathan. This is Walk It Off. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Go outside. Get better. Be awesome. Catch you next time, guys.